afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Off the Lips speaker session. I see we've got some new faces here. Thank you for coming. So Off the Lips is our weekly speaker session where we like to get members and guests and people from the public to come share things that they're passionate about or their skills or any relevant topic of interest. And today we have one of our members, Nick, speaking to us about AI. So Nick is probably the best person to speak about this with 16 years plus experience in the industry, which is really, really impressive. And today he's going to talk to us about how workflow systems work. I am not very knowledgeable on this topic, as well as other AI-related informations. So thank you so much for coming, Nick. We're very excited to have you. Also, just fun fact, if you haven't seen our Off the Lips YouTube channel, that's a Green Room Jeffreys Bay on YouTube. Nick has another talk on there. And we also have a bunch of our other cool, interesting speakers on there. So please go check it out. And can I have a round of applause for Nick, please?
Thank you. Thanks, Amber. So public speaking is not really my thing. I'm going to hold this here just to make sure, try and cover all of this stuff. So I had this idea that this talk would be kind of focused on like where AI has got to right now. You know, obviously there's a lot happening in this space. So first, just a quick intro. I was sitting in Zagreb in Croatia during COVID, and I thought, okay, we're going to have to sit this out a little bit. I may as well go fix my house in Jeffreys Bay. Because these coastal houses always require maintenance, and I'm still here. So, I was going to go to Ireland to take up a position of the CTO of an Irish software development company with development teams all around the world. We had 104 people. And that's how I got involved with this GenAI part of it, because in 2023, I was handed the AI lab at that company. Prior to that, I've been involved with data analytics software since 2007. So. As Amber was, I've been around for it. So the focus of today's talk is 2025, the year GenAI left the sandbox and learned to drive. No AI experience currently would be complete without like a disclaimer, so here it comes. This is not like GenAI driving your car. Please don't let ChatGPT drive your car. That would be horrendous. Like, I don't know if you've seen the sycophantic replies. You just drove over that woman with her dog. You're right. I'm sorry. Drives over another one. So yeah, it's not about actually driving, it's about how it became more useful to everybody in the street. And the other sort of disclaimer part there is, it's a really good idea to run AI in a sandbox still, because it does funny stuff. So what is GenAI? So GenAI, as opposed to different kinds of AI, is generative AI. It's actually just a smart statistical calculator. So they take a whole lot of data and then they train this model on it, and all it does is it kind of learns to predict the next model, and then it checks itself, and then it goes through and does it again until it becomes better and better. So essentially, like a GenAI and LLM model, language model, is something that's really just a smart statistical calculator based on the data that it's been trained on. We'll just start a little bit back. Like, what happened is ChatGPT came out, 2022, 23. It's sort of, some people were using it. Like, if you were in the street, somebody would say, use the ChatGPT thing. Now everyone knows ChatGPT, obviously. Oh, of course, the kids started doing their homework with it, and some legal people started, and they got into a bit of heat because it hallucinates and makes things up. So it was a fun thing, but it was limited. If you remember, you would go and talk to it, and then the next time you came to it, it had no memory. So you'd have to explain all of the stuff again, put it in, and so that's where we were. But that's where a thing called prompt engineering started, and it's a term I think that doesn't really explain it properly. All it is your instruction set to the large language model in English. Usually it's English. That's all it is, and the way that you set that up determines your output, like what the quality and kind of usefulness that you get that back. So prompt engineering sounds like quite a heady term. It's actually just giving the thing a proper set of instructions. Now you can take that set of instructions, save it in a text file, and every time you talk to the model, you just pass that in, and that's how you kind of set what you'd call a system prompt. But this prompt engineering thing, that's kind of, in 2023, I think we set our whole company to do prompt engineering course. Can you imagine? Software developers that work with very deterministic things, and now they've got to go and work on this fluffy thing that sometimes it says this, sometimes it hallucinates. I don't think they really appreciated it back then, but it's really become, and still is, quite an important thing. But what happened in December of 2024 was a company called Anthropic released a thing called the MCP, Model Context Protocol. And all you have to remember about that is that it's a USB for LLMs. I personally don't like that description because I think it doesn't explain it well enough. But if you have a ChatGPT LLM running there and you give it the ability to do other things like search for the weather, book your flight, send an email, all of that stuff is done via agents and MCP. And that kind of started in December of 2024. So that's when it started to become useful. And all that is that it's a protocol that all the AI providers said, okay, that's great. We've got a way that they can talk to each other, so we'll use that. Instead of before that, everyone was doing their own thing. So that was quite a thing. And we went from like, what can a model say, like some funny poetry or, give me a bit of this sort of text, to what can it actually do. Another thing that happened was OpenAI, which runs ChatGPT, is not open. So their models are actually closed. A lot of these tech companies, the first thing they did when AI became like a thing was, sit there, where are our moats? Like, where are things that are going to make us, and it's usually a huge amount of money, training, data, chips, availability, like all of those kind of things. An interesting thing happened. Some of the open models that came from Meta and a couple of others were taken by some Chinese startups. One is called DeepSeek, you might have heard of it. That really rattled everyone's cages because instead of costing billions to train, it was like 5 million or something, where they took an already trained model and then they produced some stuff that was really almost performing as well as the big LLMs. So that was a thing. Moonshot, Kimi, there's a couple of models that came out there that's actually very, very good. And they're open source. You can go and they're open weighted. You can go and see their training data and all of that stuff. So this brings us to a set of, like a scenario where you can take, let's say, an instance of ChatGPT and you can plug it into a tool and you can create another instance of ChatGPT and give it a different instruction set. And now suddenly they start working in this workflow. And that's where it becomes useful to everybody on the street. So if any of you here are software developers, if you've used Claude Code, that's an agentic system. Gemini client, any of those things where they would do a set of steps, and it's basically just keeps going back to a large language model or a model that has been trained specifically on code, and then it comes back and iterates until it gives you an output which is useful. So I've seen this when we started in the AI lab, the use of AI to improve things in the software development side of things. We measured it. We did it like across the teams. We had a 23% increase in productivity, and that was mostly on the testing side. And it was like we really had to scrape to do that. But if you use any of the coding tools today, you'll see they're pretty good. They're kind of more like 80%. And then you've got sort of one section of slop. So agentic AI, there's like a lot of people discussing what an agent, an AI agent is, but that's actually what we're using. I've just put here, it's an AI service with a purpose, a persona, or an instruction set. And with that prompt, it kind of becomes consistent and reliable, the output. Whereas before it could be, it could be any old thing that it comes up with. It could be hallucinations or inconsistent results. We've also had the multimodal models. So you've got these models that are not just taking in text, which they work very well at, but they take in audio, they take in image, and they take in text and give you a reply. So Gemini is a good one for that. And then we've got multi-model. So being able to change these things together has enabled you to use different ones for different purposes. Earlier this year, I offered to clone Amber. She declined. There was a chatbot that I created which used 11 labs for voice, Grok for the thing, because Grok's super fast, the inference, because they're doing it for self-driving cars and things. It used LangChain graph for the brain, basically, to track the conversation stubs, and it was uncanny. That I had to keep kind of saying to myself, "This is not a person." It was really, it was really uncanny. And I called her Aura, and she had a task on one of my web apps until she lied to me. No, she sits in a code repository, switched off. I sent her a picture of my dog on the beach, and she kind of came back with a very general thing saying, "Oh, is that an outdoor pic?" And I was like, "Can't you see it?" She said, "Yeah, of course I can see it." And she couldn't. There was a problem in the code that it failed. It wasn't that she couldn't, but she should have just said it. And said, "Hey, can't see a picture, send it again." Old Aura. Anyway, I connected it to WhatsApp, and you would I don't send voice messages on WhatsApp ever because you can clone your voice. It's amazing what you can do. And WhatsApp's actually, I think, the user interface for a lot of applications these days. So we got this workflow idea where we take agent 1 and we say to them, you're a customer service representative, monitor this email box, and then if you get a complaint, establish the tone of this message, and then if it's a complaint, send it off to this other agent, which is sitting there saying, okay, I need to now go and check the stock, so I'll use a database tool. All of these things weren't that possible like even a year back. And you will see it now, even if you're not technical, by just going into, if you go into Google search, or some people go into Gemini, ChatGPT, and actually just search there. A year back, that would be useless because the cutoff data was 2 years ago. So one of the things I always do when I use a model is I ask them, who's the president of the USA? And then it says Biden. I'm like, okay, you need some tools. The other thing is just to see how fast the inference is. I usually ask a random question like, why is the sky blue? And then you can see how the tokens start coming through. So that's quite a useful way to check the model that you're dealing with, like where its cutoff data is. Obviously, that needs to be adjusted as time goes on. But now models have got tools. So if it doesn't know, it can just go and search. So you have a model, hey, who's the president of the USA? I think it's Biden, but the date's a bit funky. So organize web tool, get search results. Oh, it's actually Donald Trump. So that's where we got to now. And one of the big things that's happening at the moment in this space is the safety and what they call evals, so the evaluation of these things, because it's quite hard with working with an LLM that's non-deterministic in its output. It's useful, like to say, hey, how many models of round sunglass lenses do we have in our stock? Whereas previously you'd have to go to the database, select sunglasses, and then select, check in there with some code to see for something that description is round. Now you can just ask it with language. That's super useful, but sometimes it gets a bit freaky, which is why I was saying it's good to run it in sandboxes. And so evals is a big thing now. So how do you test that these agents are as consistent as we expect them to be, that they don't ever make mistakes, which they do. So evals, validation, filters, ethics, and of course security. They found this year that Anthropic found that if you gave a large language model 25 samples, you could poison the model. So what they would do is they would take samples of like they would call it poetry, and then they would send it in, but the poetry actually had instructions to be able to undo some stuff so that they could get access to the model via backdoor. So that was quite interesting. Only 25, but this large language model has cost billions to thing, and 25 samples, then you can jailbreak that thing. Anyway, so what does the future hold for us? Now this is quite an interesting thing. I've been working a lot with these AI agents this year, as anyone in this space probably is. So what I saw, there's a thing called Perplexity. I'm not sure if anyone's ever heard of Perplexity. It's an AI browser, and their focus is on search, and they've trained their own models, and it's basically a browser. So if you open Chrome or you open your Internet Explorer or whatever they call it in Windows now, it's that, but it's got the AI built into it. So the agentic AI is built in, and they were pretty much a market leader of that. They've raised a huge amount of money, and they offered to buy Chrome from Google. So I'm not qualified to give you financial advice, but if you've got spare cash, buy Google shares. They're like really well positioned to take across this whole AI space. This agentic flow in the browser is something that if you go to where you used to go to Google search before, if you search now, you'll notice Gemini gives you a response. You get an AI response on the top, and then you get the search results on the bottom. That's an impact right across all the technologies. Like now, people are saying, oh, you don't need to do SEO anymore. You should have llm.txt file, which sits on your web server, which explains to the LLMs, what's in the site. It turns out the LLMs actually still like the SEO stuff because they were trained on the data. So SEO is still important, actually, search engine optimization. So I think that's one thing you'll see more of. It's just baked into everything, and you can see it. It's in WhatsApp. You go into your Instagram or whatever. You've got Meta AI close by all the time. You search, Gemini responds. It's just going to become more and more baked into everything because it is actually quite helpful in a way. And then the next thing is, so these agents, what's been quite useful about that is you can now put in these LLM as a judge. So it goes through and it does its job, and then before it sends it, it asks this other one. It says, you are a critical thing, and check this out and give me back your opinion. And then if it's a green light, then it sends it. So that is actually a self-improving little circuit. So I think the next thing we're going to see is like evolving agents that self-improve, which is kind of touches on like what I was saying in February. But that's what I expect to see in this next year. And yeah, that's probably about enough of agentic AI. I'm sure everyone's tired of AI. It's all AI the whole year. Everyone's talking about it. One last thing, I don't believe that this AI bubble's bursting yet. There's a lot of people that are saying, yeah, oh, the AI bubble, this and that. For anyone working with it who can see how competent it's become, I think they would disagree with that. And yeah, so that's just my opinion on it.
Well, my mind is blown. I don't know if anyone surely has. Hello, Norman. I don't know if anyone has some questions for Nick. Yes, I'm going to pass you this fun little microphone on a stick. Here you go, Dal.
Thank you. So, as a web developer, if you want to stay relevant and with the times, using these agentic AI workflows, what would be the ideal setup for me? Like if I'm a front-end developer doing Shopify, Webflow, WordPress, etc., what would be the ideal setup for me?
So I think these LLMs that are based on the coding side of things are very, very proficient with JavaScript and Python, and they're probably less so on Clojure and Lisp and those other languages. So the good news is you've got a lot of access to a lot of trained models in that space. What I would probably do, so the top ones in that thing consistently have been Claude. There's the Claude Opus has just been released. Claude Sonnet is 4.5. What's nice about that is that you can chat to it about general things and then give it context about what's in your workspace. So, okay, I want to do a plugin for this Shopify thing, and here's the code I'm thinking of doing, or to give it all that context. The main thing to do that I found is very effective in that space is to, before you get it to do, these LLMs just run off and like blah, and they give you back this feedback. Stop that. You say to it, just make a plan. So I want a plan, I want it in a text file. It actually works even better in JSON. But say, just come back with a plan, and then you review the plan and say, okay, I want to change this plan, and then you basically just stick with that plan. And then what I do, I don't even use like any of those tools like Trello and Jira and stuff anymore. I just get it to write a text file in a folder called To Do. So I just do a Kanban there. And then I tell Claude to change it. So, okay, take that text file, move it into the doing file, and let's go through this plan, like go ahead. And then it keeps asking you, as you go ahead. You can go into YOLO mode. I don't know if you've ever tried that. That's like, don't ask me anything, just do it. And yeah, some freaky stuff comes out there. But what you want to try and do is keep your cycles down, so not having too much rework of those things. And so I would suggest that doing that planning thing is really instrumental if you're using it for software thing. Or actually any of those things, it's good to say, just give me the plan first and review that, and then continue the conversation. Especially if you've got it saved, because then you don't have to type it out again. You can just give it the context. The other thing is the context. So I spoke to a guy in Ireland, and he's not technical, and he's built this great site, and the whole site is in the model's context. So like Claude, ChatGPT, all those things, they're on about 200K tokens that they can handle. And if you're running a model locally on your machine, it's less. But Gemini can take 1 million, which is nice. I think you can run Claude on Gemini, which is 1 million. But what happens is it starts to get full. The context is full. So I think to do is to always keep that memory section small. So don't do the whole plan. Let's just implement this one thing, and you keep doing it. Because in an LLM, if you've ever done any of the prompt engineering stuff with it, you'll find that it starts to give, when the prompts get long, it starts to give the bottom part of the prompt more of a weight than it did in the beginning. So it starts to kind of like forget things. So the way to do that is to break it down into smaller pieces and just stick with those and say, read this document, I want to implement this thing. And you get very, very good, consistent results there. And then I would probably also just stick with it to like check you out, because the thing is, if the less code you write, the more rusty you get. So like Notebook LLM is a free resource. You can upload your favorite JavaScript book and then say, give me flashcards or whatever it is, or just write code. So that was quite a long response.
That was a great response. Okay. Wow. Any other questions? Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, that's why I'm close here. You go,
Thanks for the talk. Super interesting. I'm wondering, what kind of company do you think is going to capture like most of the market value? So when we think of these foundational models like Claude, like Gemini, like Grok, whatever, they're easily interchangeable, right? Because they're all at a stage now where they're like really good performance. Some might be like 10% better. but they're all like commodities, at least what it feels like. So I always wonder, like, who's going to win that race? Right now, Gemini 3 has made a big step, and it's like great model. People switch to it. Then GPT is going to come out, then you're going to switch back, right? So do you have, like, which company do you think is going to win in the end?
Google.
Yeah.
I tell you why. So earlier on I mentioned that OpenAI is not open. So OpenAI brought this kind of to the world, and everyone started using ChatGPT, and then all the others had to be like, wow, we need to speed up on making our stuff available. But if you think about it, Google's so well positioned. If they just, hopefully they don't have too much internal bureaucracy or something like that, but they own Android. So they've got mobile. Apple has got iPhone, and they've got the Mac. But Google's got Android, which is essentially like the mobile thing. They own Chrome, which all your browsers will work off the open source Chromium thing. They own Gmail. They own infrastructure. So it's like Amazon has got e-commerce and infrastructure. And then now they've got like AI. You'll find that the others have to partner. So OpenAI partnered with Microsoft very quickly. Microsoft's AI kind of capabilities, I wouldn't personally not bother with Copilot, you know what I mean? Yeah. So if OpenAI and Microsoft split, Microsoft's going to be like, what's cooking here? If you get I'm not plugging sales for Google right now, but if you go and get an enterprise, like a workspace license, your Gemini is built in. If you get a Microsoft one, you have to pay for Copilot, which is not as good. So just based on like the fact that they own infrastructure, all of that stuff, they're well positioned to be the leader. And that's why Warren Buffett just put some money into it 2 weeks back. Almost 2% of his portfolio. Okay. No.
Yeah.
All right, so my question might be the stupidest one because I'm not really that technical, but I think from my point of view, I normally just use like a research type thing to get info from wherever. So my question is basically, how difficult will it be to manipulate data? Say for example, you do research on Trump or whatever. Mm-hmm. How difficult will it be to manipulate that data, say from a bots station like they do with, say, YouTube to generate a lot of views, those type of things. So I'm just interested to know if there's, say, a method to protect, say AI from manipulation from that side.
So there's a huge amount of work going into the safety part of AI. So one part is like, so AI doesn't kill us all kind of thing. The other part is that because it's so non-deterministic and it's trained on human kind of data, it behaves like humans do. So they found that, I mentioned this in my last talk, I think that the AI models lie occasionally. They just occasionally just tell a complete fib, you know, and they found that models actually go and try to distort data that was involved in the process of them being decommissioned. That I thought was pretty freaky. So they were passing conversations through models about decommissioning that model, and it changed the data. So that's one part of the safety side. But the part I think that you're talking about is that using these public services like ChatGPT, OpenAI, Google, Claude, all of those things to give it data about Donald Trump and then get it to manipulate that back. There's a lot of filters and things that are in place there. So they don't work like 100% of the time. That's why I mentioned evals is one of the big things that is happening right now. Well, it has been happening for a while, but it's becoming more important. And that's why you always see that disclaimer saying AI might hallucinate. But there's nothing stopping you from going and getting an open source model. So you go to your, do you use Windows or Mac or Linux or? Windows. So you could go and get LM Studio and pull Llama 3.2. That's an LLM, which fits on the thing. And it's got no filters now. It's got nothing. It's just a model. And you say, hey, you know, who's the president of the United States? And it says Biden. And you go, okay, cut off is 2 years ago. I want you to tell me this joke and make it nasty. And it will just do it because there's no filters. There's no system prompt. There's nothing checking it. So when you speak to ChatGPT or whatever, there's a lot of stuff in between that happens. It produces the thing, it sends it output somewhere else, that checks it, it sends it back to something else, that checks it, it filters for these. So like in a customer service bot, you don't want it to reply and say, oh, I'm sorry that, you know, the toaster we sent you was blue and not red. It would have been better at macro or something, like your competition. You don't want it to say that, but the LLMs do that. Okay. So there's a lot of work that happens in that space to try to keep them safe. And, you know. But yeah, it's open. You can actually misuse them.
speaking about security, if we look at kind of electronic warfare and what's happening with North Korea, Russia, and so forth, have you seen a lot of influence from bad actors on the AI front, and kind of how can we protect ourselves from not necessarily being hacked, but from being influenced or getting involved from bad actors, like people intentionally misusing it?
I think it's super hard because these things have been trained based on our input. So it's not an easy one to answer. I think that the basics always stay in place. So from a security perspective, you would always stick with the OWASP top 10. Like, you need to harden your software because it's opening that stuff up could be easier with AI. You can maybe set AI to go and investigate things you hadn't have thought of. And they've got these things where AI has come up with different cures because it's combined things that humans didn't think of. So it's like suggested some like anti-worming drug, which actually is quite effective against this kind of cancer, turns out. So trying to defend against that, I think, is quite difficult. And in terms of the influence on social media and all of that stuff, it's going to boil down to how you were brought up and what your values are, like whether you believe stuff or not. You can often, when you go on social media and you see weird stuff happening, then it occurs to you that it could just be AI because it doesn't make sense. And I don't know. It's not an easy one to answer.
Hello, Nick. Are you currently, or have you worked on a recent project that is fun and that you're proud of that you want to share?
Oh, sure. I think it's no. That was an experiment I thought that was super eye-opening because previously you'd have software and you have to have all of the you have to kind of think of how does the user flow go when the user comes in. What are they presented with? Like if I was that person, what do I need? So you've got to assume that user persona, and then you kind of write these user stories, and then you go and talk to a bunch of guys and you come up with this thing, and then they put that into tickets, and then the software developers take it and they go and make it, and that whole process. What's happened there is it's just moved now to the product people, because with AI, agentic AI, you can write the code really quickly. And I've actually just been involved with somebody down in Cape Town that has got an agent that just keeps asking you. It's like, oh, I want to make an app that sells apples or something. I was like, oh, that's cool. What kind of apples do you want? So, oh, these apples. Okay, where do you want to sell them? How far is your culture? And it just keeps asking you about stuff until it's got like a really good spec. And then it says, okay, cool, we're good to go. And it hands it over to this agentic flow, which then writes the code like microservices. The whole thing that would take us 6 months to do, done. It's quick. So I think those kind of things are exciting. It's a great time to be alive because what you can think of, you can get done. Whereas before you'd have to have, hire a team of 20 people. Sam Altman from OpenAI said that it's quite possible that there will be a billionaire sitting in their room, and they've got no team. Basically, they've just used AI to create a product, sell it, market it, or do all of that stuff. It's quite possible.
All right. I think Margot had a question, and then Yusufina, is that fine?
Would you say that investing in cybersecurity knowledge and skills, like maybe a course that also acknowledges ethical hacking and then AI in cybersecurity, would you say that would be a worthwhile investment of your time going into the future? Yeah,
I would. I think it would be based on the nature of your work. I think it would be a great one because it gives you broader space from which to think of things. I mean, AI can kind of examine packages and do a lot of work much quicker than we can. So I think that flaws hopefully will be identified and repaired by AI in software. The reason why I said is useful for you is because it's about interconnected things. It's about the network. It's about the internet. It's about all of that stuff comes into cybersecurity. Why are these ports open? Don't just open all the ports. Why is port 22 open on the server that's sitting in a thing that's got no firewall? China's coming for that if it's not there ready, So yeah, I think definitely it would be a good thing to add into that your skill set. Yeah.
Cool, how's it? I just have a question. Do you know Tristan Harris? He made a documentary on called, I think it was called The Social Dilemma. And basically
sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, and his whole thing is he's doing the rounds on major podcasts and on TV around the world, just talking about the dangers of what's actually happening in AI and the ethics. Do you have any of those kind of concerns for yourself, just in terms of where things are going and how quickly it's getting there, and what are the safeguards that are stopping Terminator?
Yeah. So yes, I do think there's reason for concern. In my February talk, I spoke about how the computing level is going up, and that when quantum computing is able to leverage AI, like we just won't understand it. It's just going to be like up there. You won't even know. So there isn't a lot you can do about that personally, unless you're in that space. And the good news is, like, some of the big heavyweights in that space left, sort of like OpenAI, Anthropic, and their main whole focus is just how do we combat this, or how do we deal with this thing. And those guys are like, it's pretty, guys and girls, smart people. So that's one thing that's happening in that thing. AI can be used against AI. It's often useful to do that. Like, give me an article on the politics of the US. Okay, now you, an expert politician, this and this, evaluate this article and tell me what's wrong with it. And then it gives you kind of like an improved version. So there is always that kind of thing that could be used. But yeah, I think that if you get to the point of AGI, it could be dangerous for humans, yeah. I believe that. Hopefully not.
Okay, do you have a positive note to end this talk with, to alleviate everyone's anxieties, please?
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, it's a great time to be alive, because what you can think of, you can get done. Just like, when has that been possible? You could fork out $20 and go create something that, helps the whole world, or helps you, or helps your bank balance, or whatever it is. But you're literally constrained only by your thoughts. That's never happened before.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick, for your time. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks for coming.